very important in this kind of research, and I think we are probably one of the main people going in that direction, to document the convincing part, the adoption part. So how we convince people to adopt a certain product. And I feel that overall the literature disregards a little bit that part. So when we study an information campaign, for instance, we just say that, well, it is and that, but lots of details are missed. And I was wondering if you have thoughts about how to go ahead, what's the future in terms of documenting the little details of convincing people.
So you mean, when you say convince people, I want to make sure there's two different levels. Are you mean like farmers to adopt the technology, or do you mean government policymakers to adopt technology? No, look, I think I think it's two basic thoughts. One is I completely agree. I think this is one of the big issues that we see, and it cuts across all sectors. Right? There's many things out there that we can point to that we can scream till we're blue and write it up on a chalkboard and show you all the evidence you need that immunizations are good for reducing child mortality, and bed nets are good for preventing malaria, and yet not everybody finishes immunization regimes. You see, in developed countries, not everybody finishes their antibiotic regimes, even though they're told, look, you manage, you got to finish the regime. So, failure to comply with things that are, quote, good for you is not a problem that is remain only to developing countries. We are, working on behavior change in the United States on weight loss and smoking. Right? Certainly, everybody knows that certain foods are bad for them, smoking bad, and yet, it persists. So I think this overall set of questions is one that there is, a lot more work that needs to be done integrating in ideas from psychology. Personally, is my take. But not exclusively. I mean, there's many things. If we look at price in our insurance study, price was like a huge driver. Right? That's just basic economics. We found a little bit of evidence for recency bias. That would be behavioral. But we also found huge evidence for trust, which is just pure, simple economics. The answer can be different in many different products and contexts. The challenge is always going to be kind of how to take it up a notch in terms of level of abstraction. It's never going to be easy. One of the things that we do at IPA is a nonprofit organization. We're headquartered in New Haven, but we're not legally part of any university or any affiliation with any university, except to the extent that we run research by researchers who are largely at universities. Our partner organization is the Poverty Action Lab, which is part of MIT. That's a different beast, different organization structure. But we do a lot of things together. And one of the things that we do together is we manage different pots of money, where we get a donor who's really interested in questions on topic X, and then doles out money on topic X. And so then we run a competitive thing. So we have one specifically on take-up of technology, recognizing that this is a general question that is important that cuts across many different types of situations, and we need to understand more about social learning, about the financial side of adoption, information, where are the flaws, how do you convey convincing messages, does it matter who conveys them, all these different questions. Yeah.
So my name is Ole Rasmussen, I'm from Denmark. Thanks for a nice talk. So in the beginning, I think you mentioned that registration, like pre-registration of outcomes, is one of the things that will improve some stuff. So I wrote a paper actually on the experience of trial registries in medicine, and like one thing I found was that the single most thing that made the difference of usage of trial registries was the joint decision of medical journal editors to say from this date on, well, they said we will only accept pre-specified, right, outcomes. So I think in development economics and economics, obviously we shouldn't say like that, but still maybe the idea is the same, that the editors should do something like allocate a star for pre-specified outcomes or like a section, whatever. So I just want to ask you, I know you're an editor too, like what's the progress on this? Like where's
So,
Is there any?
so, you know, I'm editing JDE, that's true, but it is also true, JDE is not going to set the standard on this. You know, we know our place in the spectrum of things. So Esther Duflo has been working on this as part of her role on the AEAs. You know, my understanding, but don't take this as, I guess this is being videotaped, so I'm careful what I say here, make sure I don't overstep my knowledge and now. But this is something that they have been working on actively. The AA is getting involved. Now, I don't expect there to be an editorial, I'd be surprised to learn that the editors kind of collectively set out like specific rules and then abide by them. I do, you know, it is different than there are differences with the medical trials. There are good reasons why people do object to, so everybody that I'm aware of, I think, supports the basic idea of a registry for specifying that there's two things that people care about for registries. There's unreporting of null results, there's publication bias, and there's data mining. Right? So you can set up a registry that deals with one but not the other. And I think that's the way that we're going more. The publication bias is easier to set up. Because there you just have to agree to post that you're doing the study to test for these things. This is the intervention, this is what you're testing. And then if somebody else wants to look and see, okay, you know, how many studies are there that are assessing the impact of a business training program on micro entrepreneurs, they go to the registry and see that there's been 27 registry studies. So that's good. Where you see definite genuine pushback is on the idea of pre-specifying, I'm going to run an OLS with the following control variables, cluster my standard errors this way, and here's my 17 outcome measures, and there's exactly how many calculate them, end of story, and then the production of the paper is, you know, merely fulfilling the plan. And so you know, the problem is that it's not the way that economists traditionally do research. Right? There's usually this back and forth between theory and data. And if you would just download the data, and the fact that you have exogenous variation from one variable means that, okay, great, you can solve some identification problems. But the traditional way that economists deal with data is to have data and have some theory, and it's a back and forth process. And so it is tying, this feeling of it's tying the hands behind the back of the researcher to kind of think creatively about the theory. The problem is that's exactly what they're trying to stop. So I don't know the way it's going to play out. But there is definitely, it is the case that they're talking again, and that this is not being done independently. Yeah.
What about crowdfunding?
What about what?
Crowdfunding.
I'm sorry?
Crowdfunding.
Crowdfunding. You mean like Kickstarter or something?
Like Kiva, yeah, or Quickstarter.
What about it?
Place a role
In Kiva or Kickstarter?
Kiva.
Okay, these are very, I don't know Kickstarter very well, I know Kiva well. Kickstarter though, my impression is this is to fund mostly developable things that are more like, you know, it's not like a do-gooder site, where Kiva is like donating money. Is that which one do you mean?
Yeah, we think that's relevant here.
Kiva?
Yeah.
Well, I like what Kiva does. They were more transparent than they were before. When they first started, the vast majority of people who were using Kiva did not know what was really happening with the money, and they thought that their money was actually getting lent to that particular entrepreneur that they were financing, and there was like a true direct relationship. And it turns out that's really just a marketing thing. They are putting money in, and that money is going to an institution which happens to be lending to that person. It's not a person directly. But you know, what I like about Kiva is that it's not a donation, except for your foregone interest. I don't think microcredit, in its way it's traditionally done, should be getting subsidy money. We're seeing for-profit companies do just as well as the nonprofits, and so we don't need donor money to help support microcredit. as it's currently done. We needed to push it to reach poorer people. We needed to push it to add on to other services and be more creative about what it's doing and do a little kind of venture innovation work. But we don't need subsidy money to keep microcredit going the way it could in its most traditional conservative fashion. Yeah.
So thank you very much. I have to admit that I have a very good, a very non-standing on the issue of the microcredit. Nevertheless, you have mentioned the green banking. It's an initiative that has been developed by a former laureate in Sri Lanka. And BBC have reported that this banking initiative has caused some problems, charging more to the poor people, lending rates are much bit higher for the poor. So my questions are, what are your critique on this initiative of green banking? What are the problems? And if it's workable, for instance, in a country like Sri Lanka, can it be workable in Europe, for instance, in the midst of this banking
So for the most part, I think the critiques of the criticisms are have about as much merit as the people who were saying microcredit is going to solve global poverty. They're both deeply flawed arguments and deeply flawed evidence to support them. So, two facts to know. One is that interest rates are not high for Green Bank compared to the world. They're actually shockingly low. So, in India, where the microcredit crisis kind of took place, interest rates were usually between 10 to 20%. Interest rates in Mexico are 100% by nonprofits. Right? They're just not that high in India. And so I've always been amazed that that's where the upward took place, when they have the lowest interest rates around the world. The second fact, though, is, here's the type of evidence that was getting front page news. It was like the one that caught everyone's attention was suicides. There was something like 50 suicides that happened where people killed themselves when they had microcredit loans. What caused what? This is just really bad analysis. It's no better than looking at big successes and people's lives getting better and saying, they took out a loan, the loan caused them to do better. How do I know that there wouldn't have been 100 deaths and 100 people went and took a microcredit loan to try to manage what that crisis was in their life, and for half of them it actually saved the problem, and for half it didn't. And so they then killed themselves. Right? That's a story that takes those 50 deaths and shows you how microcredit saved 50 lives. So it's just, I'm not saying that's right, but it's just like the worst possible analysis you can do to just observe that something bad happened in someone's life, and they happen to, at that moment in time, also have a loan, thus the loan caused the bad thing to happen. But this is what captured the news, and it was just sad that it got so much attention in that spirit, right? Now, the way to think about it is, are there practices that the banks are doing which are egregious and that need to be shut down? There are questions that should have been asked and tackled, but they were not the ones that people tackled. So in general, as a general statement, I have tremendous admiration for what Mohammed Yunus did in terms of building an institution and expanding access to credit for millions and millions of people around the world. But it was not something that we should look at and say, this has reduced poverty by millions and millions. It has expanded people's choices and made them more free to be able to do some things they weren't able to do. Now let's go deal with how to deal with poverty. Separate questions. Yeah.
Thank you very much for a brilliant talk. My name is Lars Berger from the Business School of Economics. When you were talking about savings, and commitment savings, you were pointing out that some groups with sophisticated behavior know they have a savings problem, invented more. And I wonder, is it so that you could turn that on its head in a way when you look at credit? Are there some groups that should not be given credit? You see what I mean? And are there found negative impacts on these groups?
No, so this is, for what it's worth, we're in the middle of crunching the numbers. I have a phone call later today on exactly this, looking at some of our data. Most of the studies have not found much in the way of deleterious effects, but most of the studies have also not focused on it as the outcome of interest. Most of the studies have been looking at mean effects, for better or worse. which is one of the reasons why in the setting which we set up the study in Mexico. It was the largest micro lender in Mexico, the second largest lender in South America, and they're the first micro lender to have an initial public offering in 2007, and they were $1.5 billion when they went public. So this is a big, profitable firm. And immediately after that, they got a lot of questions about what's your impact? Are you really a social enterprise? Show us your positive impact. And we've been working with them on an interest rate experiment to understand, basically measure their demand curve. Found that they were basically unit elasticity, and they could increase their profits by lowering their interest rate. But by working with Monad and having the IPO take place, that led them to aim for setting up a very large study. So we're literally now in the middle of looking at those results. But you know, the other studies that have looked at this usually just don't see much in the way of deleterious effects. The one with the worst terms was the one in South Africa. This had interest rates of about 150%. So if we're going to find bad stuff, that's probably the one that was more likely to find it. And we found an actual reduction in the number of days that people were hungry. So we see this as a good measure of the left tail. Is that you end up so strapped for cash that you're paying back this loan that you end up unable to eat, and that actually improved. So we'll see what happens in Mexico. Feel free to email me in 2 weeks. We'll have a draft on paper. Yeah.
On to microinsurance then. I was really happy to see your demand curve on the prices. And then you looked intrigued, like you were saying, if they had had a payout in the previous year, they were more likely to take up insurance the next year and vice versa. So have you tried, or do you know any studies where they actually varied the frequency of payouts, so you could do that, or you can vary the amount of payouts, so they can have it more often and smaller amounts? Because that should also change the demand curve, right?
Well, the variation that we're estimating off is the actual rainfall variation, so we're just treating that as the random shock. Right? We're not. There's been no test of the second thing you said. We can treat the rainfall as a natural experiment and just look at when we do that. But I've never seen one that did like you're saying multiple drops. What we used that result to try to convince the insurance company to do, we failed, was to get them to offer an insurance product that always paid out. And so even in the goods, so basically it's this insurance product.
How's that insurance?
That was their response. But, I had a response. I didn't win. No, so it's basically an insurance product with a little bit of a savings component, but don't call it that, is basically what we're saying. Make it so that even in good rainfall, you get 5% of your money back. And so think about it this way, they were paying a premium of 8, instead charge 10, and give them back 2 under all circumstances. And then the 8 goes to the insurance, but just call the whole thing the insurance. But that's the type of thing that would be great to see tested. It's something that does, really narrow that window of when there's no payout. That would be, I think, and I see that as one of the most obvious predictors.
Yeah, also just because sometimes it might be more important for them to get more smaller payouts than one big chunk at a very heavy event. But anyway. Yeah.
That's fine, but then when you need the money, the payout that you get is going to be lower. So it's
definitely.
You're undermining the value of insurance.
Yeah.
And I can see one with that. Also,
since they're not taking it up, we might want to try to vary it.
That could also be more cost. That would be more costly. So I would only see doing that if you had mobile money and send money.
Sure.
If you actually have to send reps out to make payments, you want to do that. Have you seen the frequency tested in any of this? You haven't done that yet, have you?
No, but what India is doing, India there's a public scheme now that's using weather insurance, and what they are actually doing is, so private insurance companies can apply and design products according to the specifications, and one of the things they want is to have more frequent payouts.
Okay.
But part of the problem is that these products are crappier in the sense that there's more basic risk in that when there's a big drought or a big flood, it pays so much, and whereas other products that are more sort of catastrophic would pay a lot more. And so And so, yeah, you were solving you're solving the trust problem, but then, you're undermining the insurance value of the property. So, yeah.
Thank you very much, everyone.